As Siri said, we are recording in progress. We are recording here. So,
You're good on both sides?
on both sides, just like that. All right.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Firing Line Radio Show. We're having another great day out here in Southern California and in Arizona. And, you know, an interesting thing happened to me this week. I actually was at a conference in Prescott, Arizona, and I heard a gentleman speak. And when I heard his story, I thought this is something that everybody needs to hear because we're all affected by the federal government. We're all affected by federal government overreach. When you find somebody who stands up and does the right thing, it's an important thing to make sure their story's heard. And I'm sure he's been out on many other subjects, but I wanted to talk to you, my listeners out there, and introduce this person to you so you understand how important it is to have the right people in our government. And of course, I'm talking about General McGuire, General Mick McGuire. He's running for Senate in Arizona, and it's an important race. It's very, very important. If you don't believe how important it is, if you're listening in California, it's like, what's the big deal? Understand that the person who currently has that position is a man named Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly is a rabid anti-gunner. He is a far left progressive, and he was an astronaut. He went to space, and I think he left his common sense up there somewhere. It's still orbiting the planet. We haven't figured out exactly where it's at, but he didn't come back rational. He is a far left. He might as well be a California senator, to be honest with you. He would fit in there pretty well. Just give him a pearl necklace, and I think he'd look just pretty much like Barbara Boxer on that. But anyway, these are my comments, not General Mick's. General Mick McGuire is running for Senate. He's got a great story. And again, as I'm telling you why it's important who runs the Senate makes the national decisions. If you lived in Arizona, California's senators make those decisions that you have to live with. But more importantly, and we're going to talk about what happened in Sacramento, California, this mass shooting they just had. More importantly, the Senate approves the judiciary. They have a judiciary committee. I think right now it's being chaired by Charles Schumer. So how much fun is that, right? So those senators who are there that can elect or approve judges make these decisions on things such as the Ninth Circuit Court. In California, we just had a mass shooting, a gang shooting, to be honest with you. And there's about 45 new gun control bills that sprang up overnight that are going to be passed in California. Now, if those are passed, they'll be challenged in court. They'll go to the Ninth Circuit Court. The Ninth Circuit Court is rabidly anti-gun, and it will continue to be that way if we don't have the proper senators in place to make sure our Judiciary Committee is rational. So, Mick, did you hear about what happened in Sacramento? Oh, number one,
I did. I didn't get a lot of the details, but as you mentioned, I believe it was criminal elements and gang related, although there's still an investigation going on. Very tragic that anybody loses their life in any kind of a shooting. But clearly, I think we can all agree that the criminals do not follow the law. So I don't understand how passing more laws will prevent increased criminal activity. Law enforcement and enforcement of the law, stiff penalties is the way you deal with criminal misconduct. You don't do it by limiting the rights and the constitutional rights of every law-abiding American.
You're absolutely correct. And one of the things that we've always seen, well, in California, Gavin Newsom has passed a lot of bills. Jerry Brown and our crazy state legislature out of Sacramento, they have passed bills where they've let felons out of jail, AB 109, Prop 47. They put these things on. Right now, there's, basically crime is free. And the felons have been released. Now, this gentleman who did this mass shooting has a criminal record. He was released 6 years early because of these programs that Gavin Newsom and these other crazy people running the state have elected. They're putting felons on the street. Now, these aren't just felons. These are super predators. These are the same small group of people that continue to make all these violent crimes over and over again. And I just can't understand why we would allow these people out on the street with their predatory practices. And, a lot of times, well, this particular case, this gentleman, not only was a felon with a firearm, not only did he have it in a bar, which you're not supposed to have either if you're carrying concealed, but also the charges are a machine gun. So he's broken federal laws, state laws, common sense laws all the way across, and 6 people are dead. And they're saying that it's a Second Amendment crowd's problem because we obey laws and we don't do that. So if you saw a situation like this, how would you handle it?
Well, clearly what has happened here is every time there is an incident that involves firearms, the radical left seizes on this opportunity. Now, you said you just saw me this weekend at Republican Women of Prescott and saw that I'm running for the US Senate to be the 51st vote. And just for clarity, Chuck Schumer is unfortunately the majority leader right now, but Dick Durbin is the chair of the Judiciary Committee. Not that you can tell the difference between any Democrat right now, because the radical left has taken control. And I said in my speech that
I think Durbin's actually worse than Sherman.
Yeah, well,
it's a race to the bottom.
But let's just say they're indistinguishable. AOC and the squad has taken over the whole party. And here's the reality. The radical left wants 4 things. They want control of your children, your thought, your resources, and your gunpowder. Unfortunately, they politicize every single one of these events, and they try to take your guns. And I can talk with more fidelity about what happened as the commanding general of the Guard in Chattanooga, Tennessee, when we had a shooting at an event back in 2015 at a recruiting depot. Was a Naval Reserve recruiter and an Army Guard recruiting installation in Chattanooga, Tennessee. What happened was we ended up losing, and I don't remember the exact number of servicemen, but there were 6 people total killed or wounded, a number of them guardsmen. And obviously the blowback came to this. How irrational is it that members of the profession of arms are not allowed to be armed? Members of the profession of arms are not allowed to be armed on federal installations. So we went forward in Arizona and we said, listen, Arizona state law, being one of the most gun-friendly states in the nation, allows every citizen without any criminal background and no prior convictions to concealed carry. So we said, the National Guard at rest is under the command and control of the governor. I went to Governor Ducey and I said, listen, the members of the profession of arms need to be armed, especially all of those that we have out in these recruiting sites that are off post and installations. So on or off installations, we required them to quickly submit to a quick background check to make sure there wasn't anything we had missed, and then allowed them to concealed carry in uniform on installation all the time. Now, immediately, the radical left was not happy, but we're standing for states' rights, that even if the territorial or the land rights underpinning those installations might be federal land leases, they're still under the command and control of the governor of the state, and he is the governor of a republic of independent states, and the law of Arizona is supreme unless the supremacy clause usurps it. And in this case, the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, your right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And to this day, they still have that opportunity. So all of our Arizona Guardsmen have that opportunity, don't have to, but can concealed carry on installation all the time and at their recruiting sites and the rest.
Now in Chattanooga, the gentle person who did that shooting, wasn't that a terrorist style effect on that?
I can't remember. I'd have to go back and review the actual incident after it was reviewed. But yes, it was someone that had felt that they were advancing the cause against the groups that were fighting on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah, exactly. So here you have American soldiers under federal law, not allowed to defend themselves in America. But you took the stance here and made sure that at least your Arizona Guardsmen had the ability to carry concealed and on a federal installation. It's the same kind of a thing that we see it in courthouses, everywhere else. Our rights don't exist where? On federal property. Now, that's a little hard to understand. That's where they should be protected.
Right. Right. We had an incident, for example, when I was the commanding general of the F-16 wing down south, where one of our local establishments that we used to go to lunch at put up a sign said, no weapons allowed on the premises. And we told them, okay, a number of us are carrying concealed, so we're not going to be able to patronize your establishment anymore. About 3 months later, the sign had come down. We asked him what happened. He says he got robbed at gunpoint. We told
Perfect.
him,
That's how you
well,
make a
when-
conservative in
when
New
you-
York is somebody.
when you put the sign up, you advertise that you're available for
Yeah.
your a
Crime free
target.
zone.
Yeah.
Folks, I want to thank my guest here, General McGuire. ipickmick.com. ipickmick.com is how you get a hold of him. We'll be right back after this. Sorry that we ran up on the,
Oh, you bet. You bet.
9:30 now.
hang on one second. Hey, buddy. Howdy. So we're recording it and we'll send it over to you. In about an hour,
Yeah.
by 12 o'clock today. Sorry about that. Next week I'll be in the studio. Yep. Or we'll do a Zoom link next week. Thanks. Sorry about that. Bye-bye.
All right. You hear me all right, Philip?
Yes, I can.
All right. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a good segue, talking about my experience down there as a wing commander of the F-16 wing, to talk about, all right. So you talked a little bit about your experience with some of these cases, and then we can talk about who I am and do that in the next segment.
Yep. This is at 9:30. You got that? Perfect.
Go ahead and if you can have him talk just a little bit.
I need you to talk a little bit. We're setting some levels.
Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Move the mic up a little bit. How's that?
Nice.
Okay, good.
And General, if there's anything you want to swing over to, just jump to it. I'll follow. All right. This is your hour.
Oh yeah, you bet. You bet. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I know you'll do it anyway, but this way I feel better giving you permission.
No. I think it's good to get an intro. I liked your opening. I mean, I haven't looked a lot at the Sacramento case, but clearly all the California listeners, need to hear it from you, not just in this show, but in others. If you're a conservative in California, you're trapped. The way you keep your liberties and freedoms is to make sure that we win races in states like Arizona so we can seize back control of the Senate.
Let's bring that. We'll start with that. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, folks, welcome back to Firing Line Radio Show. This show, you get less thunder in the mouth, more lightning in the hand. Apache proverb. So my guest here, I have General McGuire. Now, General McGuire has a ton of experience we're going to get into here, but we really want to punch home this point, to those of you out there in California. General, why don't you pick it up here, because this is so poignant.
Philip, we were talking in the break about this, that it is unfortunate. I went to high school in Southern California. My father was a naval officer. I remember the days of Reagan and all the great conservatives that came out of that state. Unfortunately, all the conservatives in California that understand that Antonin Scalia is right about the Second Amendment, they're trapped. They're trapped by the Democrats in control. And what we need to do is mobilize the California donors to be able to get involved in this race in Arizona, because if we win back the 51st seat here in Arizona, we will be able to protect their right to bear arms and those constitutional privileges that they believe in, just like Antonin Scalia reminded us. The Constitution doesn't always break your way, but you want someone holding the line on the Constitution. And you're seeing it at the border. You're seeing it with the Second Amendment issue. You're seeing it on the life issue. You're seeing it even in the foreign policy issue with the back and forth with Biden's unpredictability. And as you mentioned, my opponent, Mark Kelly, is, yes, I would say lost in space. I told him we're going to send him back. Bezos needs a driver. We'll buy enough fuel for a one-way trip. So that's how we're going to win this thing, Phil.
We could get some donations for that.
That's right.
One of the things that conservatives, I've been doing this show a long time. I've been in political talk in California for a long time. we don't organize well for the long game. Now, if you're in California, why are you even listening to the show about the Arizona senator? Because this is a federal issue. We need to have that support. We need to make sure that the next 50 people appointed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals have a Antonin Scalia type ideology, as opposed to that radical person that they're trying to get on the Supreme Court, right? We want to make sure that we have the right people doing the right things. And that means we need to play the longer game. So if you're in California, look, we have two terrible senators, and I'm afraid they're going to stay terrible for a long time. But you have an opportunity to make a change where it can affect. Arizona's a swing state. If you can put the right people in charge in Arizona, that gives us, it's as if we actually had a decent senator from California. I know, if, big capital I, if. But if we actually had that, so we have the ability to make changes other places. The Democrats have known this for years. They're PAC money, Tom Steyer, he's throwing crud all over the place. He's a crazy loon too. All these people are throwing all their agendas everywhere, and they're throwing their billions of dollars after it. We need to play catch up on that. And so you need to support somebody like General Mick. You can do it at electmick.com or ipickmick.com. And, you can send them some money. There may be limitations for out of state. I don't know, but follow the rules and get them support, because this is how we win the Supreme Court cases. California, we create most of the terrible laws. So therefore, the California Rifle and Pistol Association, Gun Owners California, we're always going to court. We're fighting that. And we're fighting that on behalf of the entire Western US. So Arizona, you need to be contributing to the California Rifle and Pistol Association, because they're the ones working those lawsuits, and they're fighting in the Ninth Circuit Court, which affects you. We're in a federalist system. We're all connected here, and the better we play together, as opposed to, well, that's them, that's California, we don't want to talk about that. Like, we better help a little bit of that.
Yep.
And California's like, well, that's Arizona, I don't
Yep.
care. You'd better care about this, because this is the
Well, and
path.
Philip, remember, there is no restriction. There is no restriction in California on donating to the campaign from out of state. You just have to be a U.S. citizen. These are federal races. Control of the Senate will hinge on winning this race in Arizona. It's just that simple. We win in Arizona, we have a majority, and we can stop the radical left. We lose in Arizona, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi stay on the march.
Look, just don't say the O word. Okay. That sets off my Tourette's, and we're on family radio here. So don't say the O.
Yep.
That's running our country right now. Just
Yeah.
don't mention that name, because
Don't make Biden an Irishman by putting an O in front of his name.
He that shall not be named.
That's right.
Anyway, so let's tell us a little bit more about yourself. Now, you did mention that, oh, by the way, you're F-16 pilot. So
Yep. So I served 38 years in the military, graduated high school out in Southern California. As I mentioned, my father was an officer in the Seabees, started a company out there. Met my wife, Debbie, in the 9th grade, went off to the Air Force Academy. 4 years later, she agreed to show up at my graduation, and nearly 34 years later, or 35 years later, almost since we graduated, but married almost 34 years, 3 beautiful daughters, 31, 27, and 21, 2 grandchildren, a 3-year-old and a just 9-week-old granddaughter, and a young grandson. And my wife and I are members at Christ Church of the Valleys out here in Phoenix. And militarily, after I graduated from the academy, I served 14 years in the active Air Force, flying F-16s, flew in the first Gulf War, happened to call it good luck or bad luck, participate in the largest daylight raid since 1945 on January 19th, 1991, into the nuclear research facility in Baghdad. After the war, came home, spent some time deployed twice subsequently to that in the F-16. Had an opportunity to go to the F-16 fighter weapons school, and at 14 years in, which is the Top Gun equivalent for the Air Force, that's coming out, some new movie here in a month or two. And my wife and I had 3 young daughters. We decided to come back home to Arizona, which is where my mom and dad have been raised, and was flying F-16s in the 162nd Fighter Wing. I was there through 2013. We talked a little bit about what happened there in the wing with some of our guys when they posted the no weapons allowed at one of the places we would go get lunch back in the 2010-11 timeframe. But in 2013, Governor Jan Brewer brought me up to be the commanding general of 8,300 soldiers here at the state headquarters and the commander of the Arizona National Guard. And I stayed in that position through January or till April 10th, 2021. And that was a very humbling privilege. And that's where we had the 2015 incident. We talked about Chattanooga, and at that time, Governor Ducey had now been elected governor. He was in his first term, and that's when we did some of those things we talked about. So that's my background, and have a most humbling privilege I've ever had to be the commanding general of 8,300 soldiers and airmen. I told him I was no more or less important than any other member of the team. And if you ask me why Mick McGuire for the U.S. Senate, and we could talk a little bit about why I got in. But at the end of the day, the country needs trusted, extremely confident, reliable leaders. That's what the country needs the most. That understands that the nation is the greatest in the history of the world. This republic is unbelievable, but it is only the best because of the rule of the law. And you can see what the radical left is doing by selectively applying the rule of law to those that they favor based on things that aren't codified in law. And if we allow it to go on this trajectory, it's not a matter of if, Philip, but when the republic comes apart at the seams. If we begin applying a two-tier justice system, picking and choosing what laws we want to follow, or having this revisionist idea of what the framers intended.
Yeah, just to make a comparison, do you know where your laptop is?
I do know where my laptop is. I'm on it right now with you. And you can come look at it if you'd like.
Oh, man. What a mess we've got with our internal agencies there. And again, that's Senate oversight. If you have the 51st, you can actually clean some things up.
Yeah.
And that's what we're fighting for here, not the 51st state. The last thing we want to see is Puerto Rico become a state or something else like that. And or California divide into 3, because then they'd have 6 crazy senators instead of just 2. You know, we want to make sure that we win. Yeah, people are talking about that. My producer,
yeah, you know, Philip,
grabbed his heart.
It's interesting you mentioned statehood. I was on Newsmax the other day, and they asked me what question would I ask Judge Brown, and I served with great members of the Puerto Rico Guard and the Guam National Guard. And here's the truth: every territory, just like Arizona, California, the rest, there's a constitutional process by which they can enter the republic and join the union. And there's a process by which that legislation goes through. But here's the question I would have asked Judge Brown that never got asked. Can DC become a state?
Yeah.
And the short answer is no. Without an amendment to the United States Constitution, the District of Columbia is a carved out 10 by 10 as defined in the US Constitution, always a federal territory, never with the rights of any states. The framers knew that. And when you hear the radical left compare DC to Guam or Puerto Rico, that should set off alarms. There's a difference between territories and the districts and the states. If there's a process by and through which we need to bring a territory into the republic, let's talk about that. But DC is a red line.
Very good. Folks, check them out at electmick.com. Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio. We'll be right back.
Thanks.
50 seconds over on that one, so I'll take 50 seconds off the next second.
You're on a roll. Normally I'd try and break there, but that was making.
No, that was perfect. No, that's a good time to break, and we can go into now. Like, okay, so you got this background.
Yep.
Blue F-16s. You're a 2-star general. Why would you get in this race? What's wrong with you? You lost your mind.
And that's when you're going to talk about.
Yeah, I'll talk about January 6th, and then the 8th.
Where were you January 6th?
It was in Arizona. Yeah,
Arizona.
I was here at the
So
headquarters.
when you met with the secretary, you were in
It
Washington.
was a video teleconference just like this.
Okay.
We had all of us on a VTC.
Sound correct?
If we're 50 seconds over,
Yeah, it'd be 9:40.
9:40.
My math is bad. I was hired for math skills. All right, got 9 minutes and 40 seconds in a second.
If you're not hired for your math skills, you can be a congressman on Nancy Pelosi's committees.
All right, Bill,
You can do the math on 10% for the big guy.
Jeez.
and we must have hired me to do the mathematics from Bill back better.
Yeah. Trillion here, trillion there.
Yep.
Sooner or later, it adds up to serious money.
Yeah, no joke.
You guys, your segment timer still at 10:30.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
All right. 3, 2.
Hey, folks, welcome back to Firing Line Radio Show. You know, you can get our podcasts at firinglineradio.com. They're on Apple, iTunes, they're all over the place, but firinglineradio.com, you can get the most recent shows. If you want to follow us on YouTube, you know, obviously you can check that out. Take a look at the good looking General Mick here and to see what a real American hero looks like. And I call him that because when you hear this story, you're going to understand why I'm having him on this show. You were a 2-star general, commander of Arizona's National Guard, fighter pilot, Top Gun Plus, right? The Air Force school is Top Gun Plus. Is that the way it works?
Well, yeah, that's what I would say. I don't know if the Navy.
I thought you might. Let me help you with that. Help me help you for General McGuire. That should be your thing. Hey, help me help you, General McGuire.
That's right.
Anyway,
You bet.
that's free. So
Well,
you're a 2-star general, commander of the Arizona National Guard through the January of 2020. January 6th, we have, I don't even know what to call it. I do not call it an insurrection. I would call it a party where the state police or the DC police open up doors and let people in, but that's just what it looked like on the videos. But you were in charge of the National Guard January 6th, and people got panicked. So tell us a little bit about the back scene of what happened here.
yeah. So first of all, here's what I say about the January 6th incident. Each of us, Philip, is responsible for any misconduct. If someone perpetrated misconduct, regardless of your hat color or your shirt color, think all the way back to the summer of 2020 with the Black Lives Matter peaceful protest that ended up resulting
Mostly
in
peaceful.
buildings
Mostly
burning.
some arson,
Right,
mostly.
right. Every one of you has the right to peacefully assemble, but it doesn't usurp the right for others to be protected. It doesn't usurp others' right to physical security, their buildings not being invaded, and those types of things. And so, yes, the incident occurred. Unfortunately, there was some misconduct that occurred. It's still unclear to me, and I'm still confused about if there's ever going to be charges preferred against some of these individuals. I don't know why the Department of Justice hasn't become transparent about affording 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. But setting that aside, I was here in Arizona when the event occurred, and 2 days later on January 8th, and you used the right term, panic, there was some panic that occurred amongst the law enforcement officials. As you remember, that night, there was subsequently an electoral college vote reconvened at early morning on the 7th. And on the afternoon of the 8th, nearly 48 hours after the incident, I was part of a video teleconference with the then acting Secretary of Defense, a guy by the name of Chris Miller. General Milley and members of the Joint Chiefs were on, as well as the adjutants general, commanding generals of the 50 states, 3 territories, and the District of Columbia. On that day, we were asked to muster 6% of our force, arm them, put them in full battle rattle, give them live ammunition and body armor, and send them to Washington, D.C., and have them on a plane by January 15th. Ostensibly to prevent any other kind of unrest as we were going into the inauguration. Now, my question that I asked that day was very simple. Did President Trump invoke the Insurrection Act? The Insurrection Act has been used by the federal government, invoking it on the states 6 times in history. Most recently, 1963, to desegregate a lunch counter in Arkansas, most studied in school. 1957, after the 1954 Brown v. the Board of Education decision to desegregate high school in Alabama, and most notoriously failed when Lincoln told South Carolina they could not cede from the Union in 1861. And the answer to my question was no, President Trump had not invoked the Insurrection Act.
Which is a giant act. It's a big, big thing.
It's a big deal. It's a huge deal. He can do it. He could do it, but he didn't do it. So the next question I asked was, and it can't be delegated to the Secretary of Defense, by the way. If someone says, well, the Secretary of Defense, you can't delegate that. Only the duly elected president can do that, whoever it is. And The next question was, had he declared an emergency? Had the president designated an emergency, an emergent condition for civil unrest or a riot that superseded the public health emergency? The answer again was no. And I'm on this call, on this video teleconference, telling my colleagues, it's not like they're not hearing it. And the answer again was no. The last question I asked was, did President Trump designate this group a terrorist organization? That matters because of a series of laws that were passed after 9/11 say that if your group's designated a terrorist organization and you're in the process of committing a terrorist act, we can use the military to go around the 1916 Posse Comitatus Act, which talks about the idea that we don't use the military to police our citizens. So the answer to all three questions, Philip, was no. I came back and said, well, I took an oath as far back as July 5th, 1983, to support and defend the Constitution. And that meant that I had to judge and follow legal, moral, ethical orders. But if what you're asking me to do isn't legal, I cannot judge the morality or efficacy of it. And I refused to send any troops to DC. Now, much to my dismay, my 53 colleagues sent 26,000 guardsmen to DC. They formed a 7-mile-long line, shoulder to shoulder, of fully armed citizens. And we had the military policing the citizens in the District of Columbia. Now, I don't care how far left, right, or center you are. The idea that an unelected bureaucrat can put 26,000 soldiers fully armed in full battle rattle into any city should chill everybody. It's tantamount to a coup or an invasion. I told my wife that night, I'm watching a coup or an invasion and the media is acting like a bunch of clapping seals. And she said, what are you going to do about it? I said, well, I'm going to jump in the race to be the 51st vote in the US Senate. And now 9.5, 10 months in and nearly 40,000 miles driven and 11,500 signatures, my name's on the ballot and I'm in this race to win it back. And everybody wants to talk about faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. But I'm telling you this, when you're pulling air, Philip, it's about faith and hope in one another. And here's the message of hope. Go forward to February 4th, Biden gets sworn in. They assemble the same call, asked to extend the mission through June 1st. Mind you, there's been no misconduct. Only by the grace of God has one of the 26,000 not shot themselves or somebody else accidentally. You know, when you try to put a whole corps worth of soldiers out the door in a week, there's a lot of problems that can occur there. But they say they want to extend this mission, the occupation of DC, through June 1st. I come up voice and say it's a moot point for Arizona. We never deployed. 42 of my colleagues say Mick's right. This is not legal, and they recalled their forces. So when people ask what the power of one vote in the US Senate means, there's a good example of what the power of one person standing up against something that's illegal can do. That's really what, you know, peaceful protest is about.
So let's talk about the background here. So you on January 8th said, no, this doesn't fly. 53 other generals, commanding generals of their National Guard said, we're okay with it. What was the back chatter? Did they ever come back to say, what are you doing? You're ruining your career.
Yeah, well, I got a call that afternoon from the Joint Chiefs of Staff from General Milley's office, and he wanted to talk to me and wanted
Milley or Vanilli, which one was it?
Yeah. And I said, well, they wanted to talk to Governor Ducey. I said, here's his phone number. You knock yourself out, but it's not going to change anything. He certainly could have let me go. I mean, relieve me of command, Governor Ducey. But I told him, I reminded him, I'm in the second oldest position in the government. First territorial governor, 1634, first adjutant general, 1636. I only have one job. It's to be 100% state and 100% federal. As a federally recognized 2-star general in the Air Force, as well as a cabinet member in Governor Ducey's cabinet. And I judge the legality, morality, and efficacy of the orders promulgated by the president and the governor of the state of Arizona. If what you're asking me to do isn't legal, I can't judge morality or efficacy of it. So you can call them. They never called. Yeah, I knew that my career was over at that day. I figured if we're not willing to stand on principle and defend the Constitution, then what's the point of the last 38 years?
That's kind of an oath. Maybe it was in there somewhere. I so-and-so do solemnly. What is it again?
Yeah. Oh, it's there.
That's something.
You're going to support and defend the Constitution. As I said in the first segment, the Constitution doesn't always break your way. It doesn't always break your way, but if people are willing to pick and choose when they apply it, when they're going to follow it, the republic ends.
That's right. Folks, ipickmick.com. Send them some money. Let's get this guy in there. We absolutely need him. This is Philip Naiman, Firing Line Radio. We'll be right back after this. Look at that, right on zeros. Making your life easy.
Perfect.
6% of the force. Wow.
Yeah, which was 26,000. The total size of the National Guard, Philip, is 456,000. 6% of that was 26,000.
So did Trump ever order those people into DC?
No, never did. It was
there.
Incumbent president.
The Secretary of Defense acted. Again, this is the investigation that needs to happen. The Secretary of Defense acted on a request from Nancy Pelosi and some others to do this. Again, it's not legal. You have separation of powers.
Save that. We're going to go into it.
Separation of
It's
powers.
always best first time around.
I mean, it's speculation. I don't know that for certain, but I suspect that Nancy Pelosi asked the Pentagon for this assistance.
Well,
She
that's
doesn't have
been
that
reported.
legal.
I mean,
I can't
we
prove
didn't
it.
hear the phone call, but that's been out there and been reported.
It's on an email server somewhere.
It's on a laptop at Pedophile Island.
Yeah.
Talk about the
Can you hear?
Yeah, a
sorry.
little bit. I can hear a little bit.
When you guys were talking about how the mostly peaceful protests in Arizona, my dad's a state trooper, and when that was going on in Arizona at the Capitol, he was actually called from the road and actually put on active duty
yeah.
as a.
Well, I was, when we get to the end of this segment, I'm going to remind them that this isn't about the idea that the governor has the authority to use the Guard in state for policing activities. That's different. And in the summer of 2020, I put 1,495 guardsmen in support of 5 county sheriffs and 12 local PDs because of civil unrest.
Yeah.
But it's different when you send guardsmen under the command and control of the governor into another state or territory. That's either an invasion or a coup. You can't leave the state.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Already.
Good point.
All right, and maybe 3. Ready? All right, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, folks, welcome back to Firing Line Radio Show. Check us out at firinglineradio.com. You know you're going to want to share this podcast, and I highly recommend that you do. All of our stuff is open. You want to share the YouTube channel, whatever it is, send it out there. Let's get this information out because Mick McGuire we need him more than he needs us. So we need him as our 51st senator here, folks. So help us help him. That's my Jerry McGuire quote, but it's close. General McGuire, anyway, we're working on that still. It's in there somewhere. As we covered our last segment, we talked about the legal authority of sending troops into DC, and you stood on the Constitution, you stood on legalities, and it was absolutely the right decision to make. Eventually 44 of the other generals, but that also means that there was 10 that didn't. There was still 10 that wanted to keep their people there. That's another alarming structure. But my question to you on the break, and I want to bring it up again, is did President Trump ever authorize those troops into DC?
I have no evidence that President Trump, the duly elected president through January 20th, ever authorized this activity. The Secretary of Defense acted on authority that cannot be delegated to him.
Is there another word for that? Maybe a French word starts with a C?
I said it's either a coup or an invasion. And when I say invasion, it would be like the National Guard under the command and control of Governor Ducey occupying another state or territory without invitation, without proper invitation. What else would you call it? These are armed soldiers occupying a federal district without an invitation from the only person that can ask them to come in, the president.
So how could this happen? How could a Secretary of Defense act on his own and say, here's what I'm going to do without any?
Well, I think there's 2 factors. I think there's 2 things that play in. One, the bureaucratic state has become far too empowered. And one of the things we have to do is knock that back. And what I mean by that is I believe that he was told by his attorneys that as the Secretary of Defense, he does have this authority. I totally disagree. I also believe there was political pressure, and I can't prove it, placed on him by the person that is the responsible executive for the Capitol structure, and that is the Speaker of the House. And the Speaker of the House that time was Nancy Pelosi. I suspect, although I can't prove this, that Nancy Pelosi panicked just like the Capitol Police panicked, and they called and asked for assistance. And the lawyers in the Pentagon, you know, for lack of their words, would be bent the rules, because here's the reality. The District of Columbia has their own National Guard. They can be called up by the Secretary of the Army. Now, we can argue constitutionally whether the District of Columbia should have a guard or not. That's a whole separate issue. But a completely separate issue is there's no debate that the title of the Constitution is United States, two S's, not United State, and that those independent states are at rest always, Article 1, Section 8, under the command and control of the governor, unless mobilized. And the only way to mobilize them was those three things I talked to you about. So I believe that that's what happened. I believe they acted as a result of peer pressure, some lawyers in the Pentagon, and Speaker Pelosi and others asking for help.
So we're defunding the police nationwide, but if somebody sits at her desk and puts her feet on it, she's got 26,000 armed soldiers coming in to defend her.
Yeah, without proper legal authority and outside the bounds of the Constitution. And that's why I said everybody should be concerned. Look, I wore the cloth of the nation, Philip, for 38 years. I served for Democrats and Republicans. But at the end of the day, if we begin to pick and choose, I tell people the last straw is no more heavy than the rest. That's why I got in. But think about it. We saw, the IRS be weaponized against political groups that were involved in PAC activities. We saw coming out of the 2020 COVID thing, kids be told they shouldn't stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance here in Arizona high schools because you should be embarrassed about the greatness of this nation. All these straws add up. And when I saw us send 26,000 soldiers into DC with no legal authority, I told my wife, that's it. I've got to enter the political fray and try to put in check the two things Hamilton and Jefferson agreed about the most. Greatest threat to the fledgling republic, a large standing army, and oppressive taxation. These two guys hated each other. But if you read Hamilton's Federalist Papers and Jefferson's Dissent, those are the only two things. And you want to know the truth? If somebody who's unelected can put 26,000 armed soldiers in a city, I think we've got a problem. Add to it oppressive taxation. On April 18th, I guess it is this year, you're going to send in a single tax dollar, Philip, and 23 cents will not leave a 50 nautical mile radius of DC. That's a recession-proof economy, regardless of how much you're paying for gas or food. That's the problem.
And they wonder why we drink.
I don't know what else to say. I mean, they were right. This nation was divinely inspired. George Washington warned us, tyranny of the majority is far worse than tyranny of the individual. Philip, all your listeners need to ask themselves, what would motivate George Washington to say that if he was born 86 years before Karl Marx? Tyranny of the majority is 50+1. The radical left wants tyranny of the majority.
They absolutely do. And the other part of that is, we hear communism, socialism, fascism. They're all on the same thing, and that's envyism. It's all envy driven. We talk about the Bible and envy is one of the sins. Do not covet. This is all that is. This is it on steroids with the force of a gun. Socialism is envyism. Not capitalism. Communism, fascism, it's all taking away from somebody else because they don't have it. And if they have the majority and they're working on that and they take an oath, it means nothing to them because their agenda is the main thing. The revolution is the main thing, right? Saul Alinsky, the main thing is the main thing. Everything else is negotiable as long as it puts their football one more yard down towards their ultimate goal. And their ultimate goal is basically hell on earth. I don't want to live through all of that because we've seen it. maybe Venezuela, Mexico went socialist. How are they doing? Any place it's tried is a massive failure, and they don't think it's going to work. What they think is that they'll be better off because they'll be in charge of more things. So those people who are running it, they don't give a crud about equal housing. They care about the housing association that they can pump money into to pay their friends. So they have, the homeless industrial society where they're pumping money into $500,000 apartments in LA. $500,000, it's ridiculous, but they're using the pool of money from all of us to enrich themselves, and they're doing it under the guise of fairness and socialism and communism, and it's absolute theft. Prove me wrong.
Well, no, I think that you're not wrong, but socialism
And
is
you're
an
correct.
economic program. And clearly you have Bernie Sanders being declared, what is he, democratic socialist, I think is what he calls himself. But socialism spills over now into all these other areas. Again, the radical left wants four things. Your children, think about all the things we're seeing with indoctrination at the basic level, the K-3 laws, all these things where we're not focused on reading, writing, arithmetic, and instead on social justice, family values, and sex education. Those kids need to be able to read, write, do math, and understand civics so they can sustain and maintain the American dream. Second, they want control of your thought. Think about censorship on the internet. Think about all the things that we saw with the medical tyranny, the things about the idea of having your right to assemble in church under public health restrictions.
Oh, now we got to put a COVID warning label.
Right. They want control of your resources. We just talked about 23 cents on the dollar. That's pretty good control of your resources. And they want control of your gunpowder, which is the focus of this show. The radical left is beating us in the first three pretty handily. But the fourth one is where we hold the line. And we hold the line around this idea. I was the commanding general of the National Guard, which is our forebear was the colonial militia, now called the National Guard. And people say, well, General, if you were the commanding general of the Guard, why would a private citizen need an AR-15? My response is simple: don't fall into this trap ever, because the Second Amendment articulated that you have the right to keep and bear arms as part of that well-regulated militia. And in 1903, the federal government made a deal with the states to provide all the resources and money to train to the standard they would need to raise an army. And in exchange, they bought all the weapons. So all the weapons that those National Guardsmen had in DC belonged to the federal government, not the states. So if you want to know why you have the right to keep and bear arms, because right now, even at the National Guard level, the federal government owns all the weapons.
Very good. Hey, folks, I want to thank my special guest, Mick McGuire, General Mick McGuire, electmick.com, ipickmick.com. Thank you for your service, and I hope to see you, Senator.
Hey, thank you very much. Thanks, Philip, and thanks to all the listeners. Have a great day, and God bless you.
All right. That's the end of the show. All righty.
General,
Hey, thank you very much.
thank you, sir. And we'll get this posted. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll cut it up and use what we need.
Very
And
good.
you guys will put it up. It's going live on Saturday.
Saturday at 10 a.m. KQ&A.
KQ&A, 11:30 a.m., 99.9 FM, 95.5 FM, and streaming live worldwide. At
Is it on all those
KQNA.com.
stations?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
All right.
also
Well,
gonna be
thanks,
on our-
Philip. It was a great show, man.
Thank
Great-
you, sir.
Great
Thank you
seeing
for
you.
your
I hope
service.
to see you again. Let me know if you want me on again. All right. Take care.
Oh, you know what? We might have you on. CCW Safe does a nationwide podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna talk to them right after this about having you on, just to talk about how you fought for everybody's rights to carry concealed. I think that'd be a good
Yep.
platform for you too.
You bet. Yeah, I think it would be too. It's a good example of action as opposed to just talking about it.
I like it.
All right.
God
Take
bless.
care.
Thank
Bye.
you.